welcome to this edition of Defacto Review, a weekly roundup of the biggest stories shaping Mongolia. Tonight with us is economist and our commentator, Jargal Defacto, and I'm Terrence Edwards. We're live on Facebook at VTelevision. We want to hear your thoughts, so send us your comments on Twitter with #Jargal Defacto. #Jargal Defacto. Coming up on the program. Independent Agency Against Corruption releases income statements of candidates for presidential election. Mongol bank cuts benchmark interest rates to 12%. Fire breaks out at the Gobi Cashmere factory. We begin our program with the elections. Mongolia's two top presidential candidates have amassed considerable wealth and property, according to the disclosed income statements released by the Independent Agency Against Authority. It should be of no surprise that the leader in earnings is Haltman Batolga, whose companies under his holding company Genco Group range from the Bayangal Hotel, the 40-meter statue of Chinggis Khan, and the baked goods producer Talek Chikir. However, you might be surprised that it's only $130 million, or less than $60,000. Miagam Enkbal has disclosed $91 million and Senhu Gambatar $22 million. So, Jargal, before we get into the nitty-gritty of these details, I want to ask what your reaction of the election has been so far. I understand you had a debate that did not go forward this weekend.
Yes, we were planning to arrange debate. Second time is in a row. And at the second time, the first time it was, the blame was that it was not announced long enough prior to the event.
Not enough prep time.
Yes, so the second time was announced 8 days ago as they requested. And then a Democratic Party candidate, Batolga, had refused to come, citing that if there will be any debate, it will be on Mongol HD, and he was neglecting the Association of Mongolian TV Association, Mongolian TV's associations.
So he had some partiality about where it was broadcast.
Yes, on one side. On the other side, he said, well, he was very busy traveling, though the others were also traveling. And we were supposed to have yesterday that debate, and I was asked to interview, to moderate that debate based on the opinion poll among the public, and 56% of asked opponents who had asked suggest my candidacy. So I was ready to moderate that debate. Unfortunately, it did not happen yesterday. But as of today, Sunday, they say that on 24th, which is the last day of election, they may come to the debate, which may happen, mostly happen in public TV. So let's see. A debate is so important for Mongolia because, why is that so important for Mongolia is our election campaign goes in such a way that mostly answering the questions why we should not vote for this or that candidates. It's a very negative approach among the population. We would rather to see why we should vote for this and that candidates.
Yeah.
And that's the missing point of this election. Why? Because a lot content is missing. Mongolians talk a lot about the forms. I mean, who is this guy, whom to marry whom, foreigner or Mongolian, and what he has been doing this and that, why. Very curious thing is happening now with these 3 or so scandals around each of the candidates. For example, Mr. Inkbald from People's Party,
yes,
candidate, he was accused having that conversation happened about the video was publicly announced, about how to raise fund for the party by selling high top state positions, government positions.
Okay.
And altogether, the conversation was about raising 60 billion tugriks.
So this was a leaked video.
Now, what they say is the person who is leaked that information looks like, or at least the current government cabinet minister Mungbat says that that person was coming to him, asked $1 million just to give him so that he can announce that it was just composition, not the real, it is fake, actually.
So they denied the authenticity.
Yes, so this is the first thing about the People's Party, what's happening. Now the second thing about the Mr. Batulga, the candidate from the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
He says now another person, former Deputy Finance Minister Kang Ho-yak said that he's showing document that according to the international, the investigative journalists, Mr. Batulga has $1.1 billion worth property offshore.
Yes.
Meaning the securities, all his value in that account. But it says, the other side says it's fake.
This is offshore, and obviously it's not in that paper we were just reading from.
130 million Tugriks income a year. So the third scandal about Mr. Gambatar is there was also publicly a video was announced, posted on the social media. He's receiving 50 million of wons or 100 million Tugriks worth Korean money from Korean businessmen.
This is the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party candidate.
Candidates, yes. So these three candidates have this sort of videos, and now we are all voters are confused. Who is right? Who is not?
Yeah.
So, but no, I'm just wondering why this the judge of the country, the second judiciary, who is legal branch of the power, having a silence on that.
Yeah.
Because it is not up to the individuals to make sure it is right or not. And yet our lawyers, the judge branch keeps silence. It shows that either they are incompetent or they're not doing their jobs.
Yeah.
So these kind of things are happening now around the election.
Yeah. And you mentioned alleged secret account offshore held by, allegedly, Mr. Batulga. This has been a big issue on voters' minds since last year when the so-called Panama Papers came out, and that connected some Mongolian politicians as well as politicians around the world to secret offshore accounts in a Panama firm. Do you think this is still fresh in the minds of the people? And we're looking at the incomes of these candidates, and it seems quite low. It's hard not to be cynical about all of this.
Yes, not only because of that, but also because the country is becoming so deep in debt.
Yeah.
And in desperate situation, they have been asking other people to borrow money. They have succeeded to borrow from IMF $440 million US, which is coming another $2 billion US dollars.
It's about 5.5 billion altogether.
Altogether, the $5 billion are coming. The first tranche is already in the country. Small money, relatively to the tranche, $38 million in the economy now.
Great. So, going forward, there's already been 2 occasions where candidates have ducked the debate. There's supposed to be one on the 24th. What would you like to see from the candidates going forward? They're going on their tours of the country. They're making lots of promises to their constituents. What else needs to be done to prove that they're the man for the next job?
Exactly. That's what the debate is about. The people want to know why they should vote for each of them.
Yeah.
Then they want to know more about their attitude towards market economy, to the role of state in the economy, price control by the government, and increasing amount of size of the government, and also increasing taxes.
Yeah.
What would be their policy? How they would see the development of private sector, which is the backbone of the economy.
Sure.
While government is getting in huge debt, they're increasing taxes, including the taxes from the companies, and not only the income tax, but also social insurance, which makes more harder for people to hire Mongolians for jobs. So within these circumstances, what is their plan? How do they believe in market economy?
Yeah.
How do still have the what is remaining from the socialist economy,
Yeah.
which unfortunately is getting bigger and bigger. As you know, there are more state companies have been created for the last 4 years than before.
Bigger government.
Yes, a bigger and bigger government. Government is now anywhere and everywhere, and so the proportion, the ratio between private property and state property is becoming very much in the favor of the state.
Yeah.
So that's the worry of the people.
And for our viewers' benefit, could you just talk a little bit about really, there's been so much talk about the role of the president in Mongolia, and this may change. What do you think the role of the president should be, and what do you hope he stands for over the next 4 years?
That's a very actual question, because now Mongolia, our politicians have decided originally decided to make this presidential election with the poll about the constitutional change amendments, and they finally have not done at the same time. But during this year, by the fall, Mongolians will have a national referendum, all people's referendum, on the changes. They have suggested some 45 or so plus changes in the constitutions. Remember, in the year 2000, it was 7 change amendments in the constitutions. We regarded the 7 worst changes in the amendments, where the parliament member can be a executive power, cabinet ministers, and they were, justifying that, all these countries, Anglo-Saxon countries, they have the same rules, but they forgot one thing.
Yeah.
England, Canada, they have hundreds of 600, 500 parliamentarians, and out of them, just less than 10 to be a ministry is nothing. It is not no disbalancing things. In Mongolia, yes, it was out of 76 parliament members, if 18 of them are becoming ministers, now try to have balance and checks and balance. It's impossible. So that's what this country is suffering from, this changes which made confused the 3 branches of power. So back to your questions, now they want to have some 40 plus amendments in the constitutions, including the power of the president.
Yes.
So now the guess is, because the parliament is ruled mostly by the People's Party, they say if People's Party lose in election, then they will decrease the role of the president, the power of the president.
Yeah.
If they will win the election, then they will increase the power of president constitutionally.
So it would be a question that would be interesting to ask the candidates.
That's one of the questions. Yes, that's what I have, because I was invited to at least moderate last debate. I don't know about next week.
Yeah.
If they will again invite me to do so, I will. One of the questions is that how they see the changes of presidential power, because it's so sensitive. Because, for example, according to the current constitutions, the president can increase its power, like he did last time when they have created, for example, the anti-corruption agency.
Yes, because he
is nominated first
powers.
of all, appointed by the president,
Yes.
including also the General Intelligence Agency, which is very strong security power offices.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about the exact role of the president, because it's quite confusing. It is not only symbolic.
Yeah.
But it's also he's nominating all judges, including the.
So a lot of
High
judicial
Court.
and law enforcement powers there.
That's the change we are expecting from the Constitution.
Yeah. Believe it or not, Jargal, a lot of people ask me on the street where my position is, which candidate I prefer. As a journalist, I try to stay impartial. Actually,
That's our job.
yeah, I don't. I think journalists should remain on the fence and watch the election rather than try to influence. But also, I've been here 8 years, but I still consider myself a foreign guest. So I try to keep my opinions on the law and government to myself, and I hope Mongolians choose the best future for themselves. Moving on in the program, Mongolia has cut benchmark interest rates by 2 percentage points to 12%, the Mongol Bank announced last Thursday, or the Bank of Mongolia. In an announcement, the Bank of Mongolia said the economy was now showing signs of recovery, inflation had been brought under control, and a financial package agreed with the International Monetary Fund had also helped reduce uncertainty. The country agreed a deal worth $5.5 billion being led by the IMF was made last month to help stabilize the economy and cut its budget deficit. So, Jargal, right on the heels of clinching this agreement with the IMF, which they only brought about 440 US dollars to, with a lot of more money coming from partners, do you think it's the right decision to be cutting interest rates so quickly after?
Well, they want to reflect the customers, people's expectations, sentiments, I would say, in the Western countries. So the question is, really, is the economy changing or not?
Yeah.
Mongolia, unfortunately, is not, our statistics office is not issuing PMI, Purchasing Managers Index.
Okay.
Unfortunately, with the economy where they quite much or almost a half of them is a shadow economy, it's very hard to have very clear indexes of purchasing. The purchasing, manufacturers' purchasing is very important index. If it is changing, it reflects inventory, it reflects your production, etc. And
it's a kind of thermometer
for
new
the orders, suppliers' deliveries, etc., which is actually shows how much truly activity is happening in creation of products.
Yeah.
And which is not happening. So I don't think our statistics can be very sensitively reflect the current situation of the economy.
Yeah.
On one side. On the other side, these changes, in particular tugrik and dollar, compared with a year ago, year-on-year basis, it's 400 tugriks less. Mongolian tugriks, with money, Mongol money, you buy $1, which is a very substantial decrease. But how long?
Yeah.
Is the economic fundamentals changed in the country? We don't know much. See, export is increased. Great. Foreign trade deficit is smaller.
Yes.
Why? Very simple. Because our coal sale had increased for about $700+ million US dollar.
Yeah.
And this is the same reflection of increase of the export. So we have not been yet producing anything other than minerals to sell, which is still shows we're still very much mineral dependent, right?
Yeah.
So if you ask, as you asked me about this, why now, why 14%, is it substantial or not? Let's think in that way. Central bank policy rate is a money expressed per year interest rate terms for the money that commercial bank would keep in the account of central bank. That is now from 14% to 12%.
Yes.
Is it big or not? Let's compare with the saving account. If you go and save money, it is 14% in Mongolian tugriks. So saving is still higher, but now 2% difference. But however, commercial banks, it should include risk-free rate, which is we regard, let's say, this policy rate, 12%, plus 2-3% operation cost, plus couple percent, or altogether 5%, or 12 plus 5, 17% is actually the level where commercial bank will be issuing more loans.
Yeah.
So because that difference is not that substantial, I don't think it will be substantial change in smaller, in particular, businesses. So the business will go only if their products will become more competitive with even cheaper money. So I don't think it's substantial change, but it's better than no change.
Yeah.
In commercial rate.
Yeah, and it is kind of setting back the clock to what it was some years ago. It's worth mentioning that cutting the interest rates does make money more readily available for lending, so it might provide some stimulus to the economy, but we'll have to watch as we go forward.
One good thing worth mentioning here is since the first tranche of this IMF money of $440 million US, $38 million US are inside of the country now in the account of the government, And now, by the end of next month, July, IMF should come, according to the agreement. They should check whether the government is doing what they have promised. And plus, they also will check or start checking the health of the Mongolian commercial banks, the classification of loans, categories, etc.
Yeah.
I think which will give more fresh air to Mongolian banking sector.
Or at least some confidence.
Well, yeah, and so altogether it will help keep our rate at this level or even better.
Yeah.
In terms in favor of 2 Greeks, but let's see, because we don't see substantial changes in the economy as we have talked earlier.
Yeah.
Other than export of coal and
Yeah.
its prices. Oh, by the way, copper prices have been increasing for $300 to $500 recently, which is booming, of course, that export as well down the road.
Yeah. It's also worth mentioning that, Mongolia did rack in a trade surplus of $1 billion for the year until the end of May. So it's the coal prices. It's also worth mentioning that North Korea is no longer sending coal to China because of sanctions. So Mongolia is getting some benefit there as well.
One may say so.
Yeah.
Why then suddenly this price would be increasing and we were now would suddenly exporting more than the whole export so far is almost more than last year, whole year.
Yeah. So there's definitely some shift in the markets. In China, they have closed down some coal mines with taking North Korea out of the equation. Mongolia does have some opportunities there for what's largely seen as kind of a dying commodity, but for Mongolia, it's got some legs on there.
So that's the coal. Who should we thank for?
Yeah. Our final topic for the evening. A large fire spread at the Ulaanbaatar factory where Gobi Cashmere produces its luxury garments for Mongolia and abroad. No injuries were reported from the fire, and the equipment was reportedly left intact. The fire covered 30,000 square meters, and 250 firefighters battled the fire for 14 hours for what was largely a fire on the roof of the establishment. The fire occurred while repairs were being made on the roof, and the Mongol District Police Department is currently investigating the case and the cause.
It turned out the fire came from the workers who were repairing the roof.
Yes.
And the roof in Mongolia is not like in Western countries. So yet, at least they were using the asphalt, burning it. And then from that, they have lost fire.
Yes.
Once it is the report says. And I have met also the owner of Gobi, Cashmere, Mr. Batar Sakhan the other day. I checked what happened, and he said, well, luckily it was only the level of the roof mostly.
Yeah.
And he said within a month we will be operating.
So some delay, but not terrible.
Well, thanks God we could. I was so worried because other than coal, it was the only Mongolian item we could sell competitively.
Well, it's
Then suddenly we get the fire happens, and I was just so sorry, but it was not that much damage as you would see. That's one. Secondly, the lessons now. All Mongolian City Hall, 250 altogether, firefighters were there with all equipments, but still took it 18 or 19 hours.
Yeah.
The other issue was the emergency help. Or emergencies. In emergency situations, Mongolians to be better equipped in terms of equipment, cars, all this what they were used. It's just a floor building, and 19 hours to take it's too long.
Yeah, viewers might remember some years ago there was a fire at the Shangri-La.
Yes.
There was some problems putting that out because it was such a tall building.
So many things to be fixed in Mongolia for public goods. And yet, not every politician pays due attention to these issues. That's the concern of Mongolians today.
Yeah, from your comments, it seems like this is actually a problem with construction methods, and maybe standards and inspections need to be revised some bit.
Oh yes, like it's the London Tower fire.
Yeah.
It could happen in Mongolia in any way.
Yeah.
And that's why we should not wait for any fire similar like in London in Ulaanbaatar. I think our inspection office should go and around make the definition or inspection of each buildings, whether it will be like in Shangri-La, because the material, the fire just gone up and nobody could stop it. The same in London. So now question is, what is our construction material safety standard? Are our buildings meet those standards? And who is approving that?
Yeah.
That's the Mongolian agenda, I think, around these fires. And hopefully, we should go out immediately from this election favor. We are too much, we are divided into 3 groups, Mongolians, fighting each other while forgetting that we still live and live next day after elections.
Yeah. And, it's also worth mentioning this has been a pretty hot and dry summer. There's been some wildfires as well. Are you concerned at all about droughts?
Today we had some small raining in Ulaanbaatar city. Otherwise, yes, it's a big concern. Even newspaper yesterday was saying that the Russians were using the fire, they were shooting the clouds there, which did not give a chance for these clouds to come here.
Yeah.
So we are fighting for clouds now, not only waters or the hydropower stations, etc. So a lot of things, and I think the whole world goes into that direction. Now we try to share fairly the natural resources, including clouds.
Well, that's our program for the evening. We hope our briefings give you a leg up as you enter the work week on Monday. Any final thoughts before we get some time before the debates and then the election on?
Yep, thank you very much
Monday.
for watching us. And now we will issue a newspaper called the Defacto Gazeta, in which we will include from next week our review also briefly on one page. So those who wants to receive that Gazeta, please send email or go to my website jargaldefacto.com, on which, by the way, our program will be this morning. This program will be tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah, you can see it there. Good night, Ulaanbaatar.